You're listening to All Things 3D, where we talk about the world of fabricating, designing, and capturing in the third dimension.
Good morning, good morning.
Oh, shoot. Nature calls. Sorry about that.
Oh, God. Nature calls. Oh, God. Where are you going? Are you going to pee in the sink? This is VR. Everything about the PC. What are you doing? It's virtual toilet time. What is this? Everything about the PC. Oh, how interesting. This is a new game. Who knew a game could feel so good? What?
Hey there.
What on earth are you doing? Mike, are you there? All I can see is you're VRing in a bathroom. And I don't know why you would even want to do that.
Okay, hang on. All right, I'm back.
Okay, I got you. You sound like you're in a hallway chamber.
Yeah, I had to go to the bathroom. Sorry about that. Oh, was that being done live? Oh, jeez. Yeah, you know, that's the cool thing about virtual reality now. You know, you can just do things virtually.
Are you wearing the new Oculus diaper?
No, I've never heard of this.
You can just go, and it's like you know, it's their new controller, and it's a diaper mechanism. You pee in it, and you can see your pee in the real game.
No.
I won't go any further. This is family friendly show, so we'll just stop there.
I don't know. I think kids can probably
they love the potty
max this up. Yeah. Okay.
I know because I'm a kid.
All right. So this is what I was using. This is obviously the has a new name now. The Neodio Play.
Okay.
Neodio Play. Neodio Play. There we go.
Neodio Play.
However, it has the Nolo. What do you want to call it? Sensors on it, which we talked about before. Mm-hmm. Actually, I talked about it last week. You weren't here, but essentially, I worked with it, and as you can see with my little demo, let me jump back to it.
And that video you did, that YouTube video that you sent me, was incredible. Where you were sitting outside.
Oh, yeah, that was. I used a Gear 360 plus some tools, which I talked about last week. If you have an Adobe Creative Suite, you now get all those 360 tools with your suite. So if you've got After Effects, we'll talk about that. If you write them an email now, it's not supposedly going to be available in the Creative Suite until the end of the year. But if you write to them, they'll send you the whole package now. So just as long as you've got the Creative Suite, the full version of it, which who doesn't? Okay, so there you go. So what I'm doing is actually moving around in space, as well as the 6 degrees. Well, actually, it's 6 degrees of freedom, but it uses an interesting relationship of like an infrared motor, and you can see it at the end there. It's like a little unit. Too bad they didn't actually put a what do you want to call it? A camera mount on it, one of those 1/4-inch 20 thread on the bottom of it. So I had to create a little platform, which you can see at the end there. So essentially, it's kind of like an HTC Vive tower that supplies a pattern of horizontal and vertical, what do you want to call it? Light, LED or laser light. And then it also has. Remember the old days, the Polaroid ultrasonic cameras that did the focusing? That might be before your time. Well, it kind of uses that too. So I think that's used for depth information. Somebody said that you can still get depth information if you turn off the ultrasonic, So it might be to work in conjunction. The cool thing is I did this in Unity, and their little SDK, which we'll talk about a little later, is pretty easy to work with. Had a few little issues with it, but for the most part, it worked out of the box. And as you can see, I can move in it. Now, this is not obviously the same quality as what you have with the, let me turn this off so I don't deplete the battery. You don't have the same quality as the, as an HTC Vive, but if you're strapped for money, especially if you took advantage of their Kickstarter, which was, gosh, how much did I get mine for? $89 for the early bird, 99. So that's great. Now they have pushed the price up. I think it's 200, 207 if you include this little app that comes with it. But you can use this as a poor man's HTC Vive because it will work with OpenVR, has a USB cable. Now keep in mind, even though they have a hack that allows you to do room, what it does, they mount it on the ceiling. It is a front-facing system like the Oculus. So you have limited range as far as looking behind you. And even looking to your side, I found that it kind of disrupted a little bit. And you normally have to be, even though I was able to get back like 15 feet, I was able to, I think the sweet spot's about 5 feet from it. So it's a really neat tool. Obviously, you do need a Android phone. I actually have this working on my Google Pixel XL with Daydream, and it worked really well. Yeah, I like it. Now, obviously, using Daydream or Cardboard, you have to keep that in mind. It is not an HTC Vive with a good computer, so you got to limit your graphics. And that's what I'm going to talk into. I found this great product I talked about a little bit last week. I'm going to give a little bit of a rundown on how to use it. It's called Simlab, and it does automatic baking. And I'll talk about more what that is. It's not making cookies or anything. So we'll talk about that. And then I want to bring on or show off this little thing. I've got some demos myself on using ARKit, but this one has to go into your little library, Chris. You ready?
Yeah. Yeah. Landing it in your pool? What? Is this an app?
Well, it's, as I was talking about, ARKit, and I will give you some examples of it. ARKit,
I got to watch that. I got to watch a Falcon 9 go up from Vandenberg on Sunday. So that was
cool.
This is cool. This really is
well,
interesting to me.
We'll go ahead and I'll jump to the end here. So essentially, because this new application, remember they bought, what was the company? Not 6 Sense. They're my, we don't mention their name. Gosh, can't remember. It was a company who created the Kinect. It was an Israeli company.
PrimeSense.
Apple bought, thank you, PrimeSense. Plus they bought Mateo, which we also interviewed, remember, at before they became. So between these two companies, they have a lot of technology to one, what they call SLAM, which we talked about in the past, and as well as doing AR without having targets. So the combination of those two, they've now developed an AR kit, which if you do a little bit of programming, or if you work with Unity or Unreal, you can now create these very, very cool, as you see here, 3D, what do you want to call it? Objects that you can then place in the real world. Now, keep in mind, what they're not showing you here, as I'll show in my own demos, you have to hold up your device in front of you.
Right.
So it's not like you're wearing it.
Yeah.
But if you've got like the iPad Pro 12.9 inch, which I bought a used one, it's like a window in front of you. And again, I'll show you a little bit. So you saw that bathroom I was in the VR world. Well, I've also created a little dollhouse version of that in ARKit that we're going to be showing off.
I really like this, Mike, because in a way you could actually use this exactly like you have here to like film a shot. So, or like simulate a shot that you put in a video, let's say. So you could have, you could go out and you could shoot a video, but before you shoot it, you set up you know, augmented reality style. You set up where the objects are going to go. So like in this one, you could set up these two objects are interacting with where the pool is, right? So you have the drone ship is floating in your pool, and then you film it however you want to film the rocket coming in, and you could do some really cool, like, realistic scenes that you wouldn't really otherwise be able to do, or that they would require a lot of post. In this case, it doesn't require any post because you're actually filming like objects, like virtual objects in the real world. I think this is really like could be like a really new thing.
Well, Chris, I hate to burst your bubble a little bit. About what, a year ago?
Yeah.
Well, no. Remember, ILM FX actually used the you know, the forerunners of all this. Remember, Occipital with their sensor has been doing mixed reality for 2 years now.
Yeah, and I know
using them.
I know Lucas and even James Cameron has showed they do like live, like the costumes and stuff. But like, I think on your phone, you know, it would be you know, on your iPhone, if you could use your iPhone to do this, that's such good. That's a really cool, because there's that app. It's called, I think it's called like Motion FX, that became really popular, where you could like shoot missiles and blow up people on your on your iPhone. Yeah, but this is like actually augmented. That's cool.
Yeah, well, it obviously is.
This is ARKit. It's called.
Yeah, ARKit, they add the word or suffix of kit to everything, but it works in conjunction with SceneKit. But more importantly, ARKit also has a plugin for Unity as well as Unreal. So if you're familiar in working with those applications, it's kind of a no-brainer to move forward with something like this. And like I said, I'll give a little bit of a, well, actually I don't have it, my Apple unit set up here, but it's pretty straightforward. You just follow the instructions. So if you do have some experience in any of those 3D applications, it's pretty easy to get this up and running. There is some caveats though. One, you need a device with an A9, A10, or the new A11 processors that are coming out. They need
What's
to be
in the 7? What's in the iPhone 7?
The iPhone 7 has an A10, so
okay.
An A10X. So you'd be more than sufficient with that. In fact, that's what I would recommend, unless you can hold off on the iPhone 8, which not only will it have the best processor, it will also have a screen that is as high density as the new, what is it, the Galaxy S8s that are out now. It'll be probably just as large, but in the same format as the smaller iPhone 7, not the larger one. And it'll be AMOLED, so it could be used for VR. Or, and also there's something else that's very interesting. They still have dual cameras like the previous version, but the dual cameras are horizontal instead of vertical. So when you put it in landscape mode, it kind of reminds me of having dual cameras to actually for parallax effect. So we might be seeing some depth distinguishing features, not only the plane, which is what the plane detection, which is what ARKit uses, but we'll also be able to sense depth. So essentially, if this is the case, sadly, for Occipital's sake, it would make their product obsolete. But we'll see what happens if that's the case. Now, keep in mind the Occipital product is an active Connect type device and can do occlusion, self-shadowing, and things of that nature with their kit. So if you're wanting to get something more robust than ARKit, Occipital will have something. And they will also be combining features with ARKit. So I think they'll be taking advantage of some performance things that weren't there that they were having to do from scratch with ARKit. So that'll just make their product better. But I've covered that in the past. All right, Chris, we've got a lot going on today.
We do.
You know, one of the big things, and one of the reasons I was hoping you could come on, is this product, and I'm going to jump right into it. But our theme today, if you remember, Chris, is, you know, is VAMR, as I call virtual augmented mixed reality, is that going to make things safer for us? And, you know, I think of the day. Well, we got 4th of July coming up, and I don't remember the number of injuries that are out. Sadly, when there's 2 people, Chris, you don't get to see you, so you'll have to make that motion again about what you just did. There you
Is
go.
it gonna make it safer? I don't know.
Look,
I don't
Chris
even know
green today.
what you're talking about.
Well, one of the things that's coming up is 4th of July, and a lot
Sure.
of people decide that they want to go out and take a chance in blowing their fingers off. So
That's me.
imagine, yeah, great, or setting fires or whatever the case may be.
No, yeah,
With
we won't
the
be doing that.
So with VR, you could literally, with your hand controllers, we saw the demo with the balloons in the HTC Vive. I think I showed that off on the show, but you could do that with fireworks and just throw them out with your hand controllers, and enjoy fireworks without ever having to actually light one. So I know obviously it doesn't give you the smell, the ARKit smell, but I guess you could get one of these new smelloramas and place that in there so that, you can have the ARKit smell of gun.
I don't know, man.
Or just imagine creating a VR fireworks display. And I'm hoping that somebody has already decided to be creative. I have not. So maybe there'll be some apps out there. I haven't looked. So who knows? So instead of partaking in your own experimentation and blowing off your hands, you can do that. But the other thing to keep in mind with VR or VAMR is, as you saw in this little illustration here, be able to use AR or mixed reality like the HoloLens or VR to demonstrate, for safety reasons, or overlay information as you're working on. Imagine if you're an electrician and you've got an overlay, so that way you don't hit the red wire instead of the blue one and blow yourself up. You constantly can monitor what's going on with your system by using this augmented reality where you overlay information. And with Mix, you can actually have components with the real world. So you can match a component that you have in your hand with a component that's in the glasses or whatever the case may be. Also, from an architectural engineering standpoint, going out to a site, overlaying what that site should look like over the existing site, and then realizing, oh, geez, there's like a 3-inch gap. That's not going to be good. And they've already found this out. Somebody told me about a war story that they were designing a hospital and the elevators didn't fit in the shaft correctly.
Oh.
So now with something like this, you could go out there and say, oh, wait a minute, that's not going to work. And as I talked about just a few weeks ago with my remodels, I was able to determine that the dual-sided gas fireplace was smaller than the column, and was able to give them a heads up so that they were able to think about it before actually coming out, saving both time and money. And then what I'm going to talk about a little bit later, as you saw when I went out to the virtual bathroom, we're going to be putting a new bathtub, which I think I talked about in a previous episode, in our smaller bathroom. So now we can actually pop in different bathtubs, look at clearance, spacing, and then determine, what else we want to do with that, all before breaking out a wall. In fact, we just had a contractor come out, and I was able to hand him some prints of the 3D layout, which he took with him. So he already has an idea of what we want. So nobody needs to be surprised anymore. It's funny, the contractor said, oh, one more thing I'm going to have to learn. I said, no, you don't have to. You just contract it out to me. I'll have the client come over and you can show. So as you know, that was one of my goals. Okay, so the interesting thing today is, let's see, where's my desktop capture? Is this little product. I don't know about you, but this was super cool. Now,
I got to meet these guys.
What?
Or one of the guys. Yeah, they're out of Santa Barbara.
Cool. Would you see him at?
I met the guy in San Luis. He was at the robotics, the little mini maker fair.
Oh.
He was at the robotics thing. You and I did it together, I thought, that one year.
We've done it 2 years.
A couple times. Yeah, we did it a couple of years, and this guy came by, or the kind of the CEO of the company came by, and I chatted it up with him for a little while, and I've been kind of tracking his progress because actually one of the projects I'm involved in, which is like an autonomous vehicle platform, is actually probably going to switch over from the old FPGA style LiDAR that's really expensive. This basically took $25,000, $40,000 scanning technology and brought it down to $300.
Yeah, well, let's go ahead and talk about it. That's cool. I didn't know that. Maybe you can put in a good word and we can both get one. Yeah.
I don't know what I would use it for personally right now. I mean, I could probably come up with a project that we need it for.
Well, let's talk about it first. I've had an opportunity to work with a Trimble version that was like 50,000, maybe 100,000. I think we got one used at the RM Design Group, and actually was able to design a group of fellow tech guys. It was kind of cool and create a point cloud from it. Those particular versions are obviously higher quality, longer range, but what they've done, and we kind of talked about this previously about these portable LiDAR units, and why are they becoming very popular right now? Because with autonomous vehicles, LiDAR is, especially in the Google vehicle, is one of the main products. And if we're able to map our environment in 3D plus using other sensors and then sending this back, we can then determine where objects are, if they're moving objects and so forth, recognize what they are. Obviously, there's a lot that's going on in that. But because we're wanting to make these more and more portable, obviously that's why we're getting something like this. Now, remember, the original Scans was basically a 2D unit. Well, what they've done is created a full open source kit that turns it into, as you can see there, one's on a tripod, turns it into a full 3D. And what it does is it scans and then rotates. And then here's a little video.
Oh, they moved. Huh. Yeah. See, that's amazing. So like, but this is with, I mean, what's the Scans going for these days? It's what, $300 or something? 349. Yeah. 349. You can pre-order, and SparkFun's going to carry it. So for $350, you can play around with like a LiDAR that's basically pro quality 2 eyes. So it's got stereo scanning. I mean, they're building a whole like RESTful API and the whole, they're building it up to the latest. It's all, I mean, this thing, and it'll, they're obviously building libraries. They're abstracting it for ROS, which is like, ROS is, the open source robotics platform that's gonna power. That's the you can run it on a Raspberry Pi now, and you can have like really powerful autonomous robots now can be built on these like really cheap sensors. That book Bold, I think I talked about a couple weeks ago that I recently read. Basically, one of the exponential technologies right now that is just like totally the one, like, this is a perfect example of, and why or what's exploding, just like the transistor did in the 80s and 90s and continues to do, is sensor technology. So like all these little sensors, this is like, if there's ever a time to get into anything, it's time to get into sensors. And this Scans thing is, I mean, such a genius little contraption, because it's just taking basically $50,000 components and making them cheap, bringing them up to scale. There's no reason everybody doesn't have this, especially because, like you were saying, is autonomous vehicles that's the way it's all going to go.
Yeah, well, keep in mind, and I'll get back to it. Well, here's your full kit. So essentially, other than some 3D printed components, essentially a Raspberry Pi 3 and then assortment of screws and connectors. And that pretty much makes up the kit. But let me jump back. That's not what I wanted to do. What's not shown is that you still need the actual LiDAR unit, and that I think was a $300. So the full kit is about $500. But here's they showing it being assembled.
Oh, and that little unit, what's the little unit below the Pi? What is that?
That's a battery.
Oh, got it. Oh, so it's completely wireless.
Correct.
Wow.
Well, self-contained, yes.
I kind of want to build one of these.
Yeah, I know. Isn't that kind of cool? Well,
so it'll do the, does it, and it oh, got it. Oh, wow. So it'll actually rotate two axes. Is there because the
LiDAR is
the sweep itself has a motor in it already?
Correct.
Got it.
Yeah, so it sweeps on, what is it, the X? No, the Y. And then the motor here runs on the X. And then by combining the two and the way that LiDAR works, you get the Z axis. And so by using these three together, you can create a full point cloud. Then you have to obviously use other software, and they recommend not MATLAB. What's the one that we've used before? I can't think of it now. It's
for scanning?
Well, for 3D stuff. And it's something that I use, and I can't think of the name now. But essentially, you bring in there as a PLY, and then you can then turn it into a model and clean it.
Are you talking about MeshLab?
Thank you, MeshLab.
We're on the same page.
I'm sorry?
We're on the same page.
We're on the same page.
Yeah.
All right, but this is a scanner kit. Now, also, you can, let's see, does it give a list? It's open source. So all these items you can purchase separately, or if you've got them, and then they provide all the instructions and in order to make this yourself. So you don't have to buy their kit. The STL files are available for the housing. You know, like somebody I know could probably do this on them. So here's your assembly instruction, which is a PDF.
They're doing it right. They're doing it right. Wow.
So essentially, if you buy the unit, print the parts.
Everything else is open source and totally cheap stuff and 3D printed stuff. Wow. Look at that. I really want to build. I really want to build one of these. I might build one before I buy the sweep, and then once I have the bottom unit complete. Wow, that is.
And then they also include the software out on GitHub, so you just download your files, and more than likely, it's probably, I don't know if it's a full scanner node web. So it has the front end design, Python scripting. So essentially, everything is there. Using Python makes it very easy to redo the scripts and get what you want out of it. But yeah, this is really exciting. And I can see this not only being, well, the only down thing, let's see if we've got, yeah, let's look at the accuracy. So the accuracy isn't the best. It's roughly accurate to 1% of the measured distance. Obviously, the closer you get, the more accurate it will be. But it says if you're closer than 1.5 meters, then it ramps up to 25%. So your sweet spot is 1.5 meters from the actual scanning head. And then I guess in the sweeps user manual, there's a graph. What's the maximum point density? It is 0.36 degrees resolution. So what do we got? So that basically tells you, and it uses a 1 hertz scan rate, meaning 1 second at 1,000 hertz measurement rate and the horizontal rotation. So basically all this together, it doesn't really tell you, but if you put the numbers together, you can figure out how many points you're going to be getting in that sweep arc. And then it says, can it be imported? And it says, yes, it can be. It's a common separate or comma separate values, but then it can be imported into PLY files. So yeah, it's all there. Obviously, it's crude, but a lot of this stuff is crude when it starts. So people will probably create more refined applications. So yeah, this is really cool. Now, something that it doesn't mention here is how long does it take? If you have a sweep that takes a second, you're not going to get real time. So if you wanted to use this to accurately identify yourself in a video game, we're not there yet. This isn't fast enough. But if you want to sweep a room and then bring that point cloud into something else, this would be a pretty great product to work with from that percent. Obviously, they showed that here. Also, LiDAR works fairly well outside, unlike some of these other 3D sensors like from Occipital, other, I can't think of the names, but essentially anything that uses light that is not modulated from a laser beam, as in this, was going to have a hard time in bright light. This would not be the case with this here. So yeah, if you move forward that, let me know. I'm thinking I'm making one myself. Or worst case, farm out the 3D printing to you.
It's
okay. So
that's a pretty cool little project. Yeah, and you don't have to. I mean, these print files, they don't even require engineering grade because they're just the base. I could just throw them on the TAS and print them out of.
Yeah, they don't look like
copolyester.
Yeah, and they'll probably be pretty expensive if you tried to use other forms like shapewear or your more fancier orders.
I'm digging it,
Chris.
Okay.
Item.
Yeah. So
that?
Ultimaker. This is an announcement from yesterday or a few days ago. Ultimaker kind of announced some new stuff. For those people that follow Ultimaker, you know, they're kind of always on the forefront. To me, they're always doing cool new stuff. So this week they announced polypropylene material, which PP is, it's fun to say, is a really great high fatigue resistant, chemical resistant material that you can use. That it's highly recyclable, but it usually is pretty tricky to print. And so they have a new kit that you can buy that they've had for the Ultimaker 2 Plus, which was the advanced 3D printing kit. So they announced an advanced 3D printing kit for the Ultimaker 3. It comes with a front enclosure, an additional glass plate, adhesion strips or sheets that you can put on the glass that make it so some of these materials like polypropylene and other materials that they announced will, and then they have like their recommendations for, I bought some of this CPE plus material and it didn't work. I bought some polycarb that they had available. It didn't work. They didn't even have profiles in the machine to even load polycarb yet. So you have to have this 3D printing kit to even do it. And I didn't know, but they had that available for the Ultimaker 2 Plus, but they didn't have it quite available for the Ultimaker 3. So they offered the PP. They also offer TPU 95A, and they've improved the PVA profiles. So when you're printing with PLA or CPE and PVA, they also announced some new print cores. So we've talked about it before, but one of the benefits of the machine is they've got these really cool, the Ultimaker, on the Ultimaker 3 now, they have these print cores that are really quick swap print cores. You can just unload the material and swap them out in a couple minutes. So, if you need to change your print core because it's worn out or it's jammed. But now they have announced a 0.8 millimeter nozzle print core. So they have 0.4 and then they have 0.8 now, which makes it so you can print twice as fast. So they have some like quick print. So if you're going to print some big stuff and you wanted to print it really fast, they have that available. They updated the firmware, and of course Cura always being updated, but 2.61 has some really great improved things that interest me, especially the nylon PVA adhesion, and just their normal bug squashes. And so lots of updates from Ultimaker, and the TPU being the other one, another material that they have released now is the 95A, which is good for flexibles. So it's basically like a Ninja Flex or a semi-flex, and it's chemical resistant and really strong stuff. That semi-flex stuff is really strong, but this is actually a Ultimaker semi-flex machine that's certified by Ultimaker. So you just load it in, load the profile into Cura, and it'll work great right out of the box. So real excited to order some of this, and I ordered some of the other stuff, and hopefully it'll be here early next week, including the advanced printing kit for the Ultimaker.
TPU, isn't that a flexible material?
Yeah. So polyurethane. Yeah. So thermopolyurethane. And so some updates from Ultimaker.
Super cool. Well, what I'm looking for now, and I'm not actually able to find it, but I wanted to go right into this. This, I think, is very important. And if you remember, what was it, a couple of weeks ago? I don't remember exactly the time period, but no, it was further than that. A few months ago, maybe even. Yeah, it was actually in January. We talked about the couple from Berkeley who they didn't really know how they died other than it was from carbon monoxide, and they don't know how that actually happened. So we spent some time scouring the web for actual material on the safety of 3D fabricating materials. And this just came out. The UL, Underwritings Laboratory, in conjunction with the Georgia Institute of Technology, has posted quite a few articles. And let me jump to my page here. And this will be in the show notes too. But there are several articles, and I'm going from oldest to newest, that go through and talk about particulates as well as printing health effects. And I didn't read through all of these, but obviously there's a lot of information. And I did print or go to one that actually was a PDF that I have here. Like, it's a whole chart identifying their method, determining the amount of particle emission rates, and then some charts here, different material types, and then the aerosol physics, emitted per time of object mass. So as you can see, they put a lot of time in using some very scientific methods to accumulate the data. So I thought that was extremely nice of them. And this could be 3D printed and put out as a chart if you wanted to.
Well,
So
and did I mention, and this totally pertains to what you've got going on here. I don't know if I mentioned, was it a couple weeks ago, I was working on a VOC sensor, CO2 VOC.
You did mention you were going to do that. Mm-hmm.
And it's completed. It's a little standalone unit that just needs a USB. It plugs in USB or uses your 5-volt connection on the bottom to power the Arduino. Mm-hmm. And it utilizes a CCS 811 sensor from SparkFun, which is a VOC sensor with the libraries built in, and then an LCD. And I put it up on Thingiverse. I've been getting a lot of love on Reddit and Thingiverse for it. And hopefully they push this to the front page on Thingiverse. I would love to see this succeed. But I put all the Onshape files in there. So anybody that wants to tweak with the Onshape, I put the code on create.arduino.cc, which is their cloud-based IDE/repository for Arduino projects, and so all the code is on there. You can just go. I'll put a link to it in the show notes. But it works, and I can see on the fly my parts per billion of CO2 and parts per million of VOCs. So it's like live environmental monitoring. I don't have any logging built in because I just didn't go there with it, and I have an SD card shield that I could probably do, but you can actually, if it's plugged in your computer, you can take the serial data and you can log that from the serial monitor, paste it into Excel if you wanted to do some of these graphs or something. But it works really nice. I just kind of have it running all day next to my desk, and I can kind of see where I'm at in my CO2 and in my VOCs, and I can kind of reference it to some reference material that's out there. It takes about 20 minutes for the little sensor to kind of warm up and really get some reliable data. But after about 20 minutes, it starts producing reliable data that you can then go to a site like you're on, and you can look at kind of where you stand as far as like safety. And so far, I'm within the confines of safety. I do have some great air filtration in my office, and then I also run a diffuser. I've talked about an essential oil diffuser, because essential oils are shown to mitigate VOCs. They're VOCs in their own way, but they're healthy VOCs. Obviously, they're not dangerous VOCs, but they will oxidize other VOCs in the that are floating around, and that's why. And essential oils have been used for thousands of years. So, and they are effective at keeping you healthy. So that's my opinion. I'm not a doctor, but that's my opinion, and it also makes it smell nice, so clients love it.
They know the Holiday Express, so you are.
A what?
When you stay there, you never seen those commercials of the?
No. Oh yeah. Oh yeah, Holiday Inn Express. Yeah, I stayed. Yeah, well, doctor. The traditional definition of doctor actually means teacher. That's all it means, and so it's kind of crazy what we've kind of turned doctor into. They, with the American Medical Association, and how they are the only ones that can prescribe care, and it's very bizarre that you can't choose who your own doctor. They have to have a certain diploma from a certain institution. So that's a whole other topic we could go down.
Yeah, I mean, let's not.
Well, we're segueing into 3D in medicine.
No, we're not. Not
okay.
Yet.
Not yet.
I have a couple of other items, but no, there are some good points there. But what needs to be done more, and even in the medical community, is more validation. As you said, what does it take to get a medical degree? Just asked, what does it take to become our president? I don't need to say any more. So we actually, what are our qualifications now? And yes, there are some good alternative medicine. Can we say physicians? But the point is credentialing and rigid scientific studies, and without those going together, even in the medical community, in the alternative, we have some wackos out there, and sometimes it's the medical who are pushing alternatives and really don't have any science behind it, but their title, and that can be very scary. So I have a lot of opinions. As you know, I did a TEDx talk about making sure that you get the right person doing the right work, and otherwise don't rely just on their title, because that can be misleading. All right, let's just summarize again. So if you're interested in finding out and doing some own studies, Chris has a little device that will be helpful. I don't know if they have sensors to determine that. They might actually identify the equipment they use, but I think it's a great source. The fact that the Underwriter Laboratory has taken this seriously means, hey, maybe 3D printing in a consumer market has reached a point that is obviously of interest to the professionals who do this for a living. So kudos to that. And the consensus, though, was no. 3D fabrication, consumer 3D fabrication has not been a problem. But they do have some caveats, so just keep that in mind. All right, Chris, let's see. What's your next item?
My next item is definitely a really cool one from this week. We're going to take a look at Printrbelt. Had a really cool new project that they've been working on. This is really fun. And make sure my screen's up for this one. So this is Printrbelt. This is their new... this is their new Printrbelt product, which is a belt that prints. It's theoretically endless printing. So it prints like at an angle on this belt, and what it does is so like it's printing the objects and then it kicks them off the belt. So you could leave this, you could get it go. This is perfect for short run production because you could basically get it going on an object on an endless supply. Let's say like they have these spanner wrenches like that were printed like by the Made in Space kind of guys. And so these are like little wrenches. So let's just say you had a short run production and it kicks them off the belt automatically. And yeah, it's a really interesting. So they started a pre-sale right now. They're $2,000 for this. You know, if you want one right away, the pre-order started for, and so they're $2,000. And you know, if you want to gamble and get something like this, I don't know what's all included in that, you know, and what kind of software is running these things yet, but I think it's just a cool concept. So Printrbelt, you know, I don't think Printrbelt was the first one to come up with the design. I think it's based on another open source design, but I think they're kind of chipping away at trying to perfect it, and they've definitely been doing a lot of work on it. And obviously the software, there's got to be some sort of tweak, unless I don't know what kind of software they're going to run. I mean, essentially you could set it up, but it would be like an endless Z. And then the number crunching would have to be, the firmware would definitely have to be some sort of different firmware. So pretty cool.
Yeah, I thought that was kind of neat. I don't know. I don't know if I'd rely on that fabrication technique for a long run of parts.
Yeah, who knows?
I mean, we both had our nightmares of printing and then coming back and having half our model snarled in a big yarn of 3D filament.
Oh yeah, when you have a shop, I come in every day and there's one of my printers is a mess.
Yeah.
Usually on most days, especially Mondays. Mondays are, you know, always the day when you know you're going to come in and 2 or 3 of them are something went wrong.
Well, I'm going to show a video. It's about 5 minutes long, which I'll go ahead and start now.
We present an interactive design system that allows novice users to easily retarget a mechanical template like this.
But essentially, Adobe teamed up with ISTE to show how we can take mechanical mechanisms and combine them with models to create new and fun things. Like here is a template for obviously a drivetrain for a vehicle.
Okay. 4-wheel drive.
Describe spatial relationship between shape and mechanism. For example, that a component should be inside the car body and higher level goals. For example, the car drives in a straight line without slipping. The mechanical template is designed in a pre-process by an expert. Given this template, the user provides a target shape he wants to turn into a functional model.
Okay.
Our interactive design system allows the user to provide high-level guidance on how the template should be retargeted and explore various...
Are you hearing that, Chris?
A little bit. You could turn it up a little bit.
Necessary low-level adjustments.
There we go. Perfect.
To ensure that the design stays feasible. The final output is a working design that can be fabricated with additive manufacturing techniques. In the following, we will demonstrate an interactive design session. The user starts with a mechanical template and a 3D target shape. He then roughly aligns the model with the template and starts providing a few initial correspondence, such as the position of the wheels. The mechanism is then optimized to fulfill the constraints encoded in the template. For the current template, these include constraints such as that the pairwise interactions between mechanical parts must be preserved, that specific parts should be placed inside, that the wheels need to touch the ground, that the car needs to be able to drive straight forward. The user can interactively select components and edit them to achieve the desired aesthetics and functionality. Okay. This allows users to intuitively revise and explore designs. And finally, Connectors between the mechanism and shape are generated, and intersecting geometry with movable parts is carved out. This is the final model, which we fabricate with a Start Assist J750 3D printer. After inserting the servo and motor, it is ready to use. We used our retargeting system to design several mechanical objects and validated their performance by fabricating physical prototypes.
Huh. It's got a cam in it for the, wow.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Well, you get the gist of that.
Yeah.
So let's go out to the actual page. So this was in 3D printing industry, and Corey Clark seems to be, I haven't heard of him before, but he sure has a lot of articles out there. This is obviously another excellent article from him. But I don't know if you remember, we talked about it briefly, and I just kind of lost sight of it. So we're going to go back to it in a moment. But Project Felix to combine 2D and 3D images. But this is a 3D printed prototype from ISTE of Austria. Now, what's interesting is that this is a certain piece of software, but I don't actually see where I can get that piece of software. Did you? I mean, I don't know, maybe I can look further. Okay, so I guess there's a paper here that we could go out to. So it doesn't appear to actually have the software that they used, just the functionality of retargeting mechanisms to 3D shapes. And then here's Project Felix, if you were not familiar with it. If you're also a Adobe Creative Cloud subscriber, you should already be familiar with this. But I have not ventured back to it in some time, and they have obviously a large stock of 3D objects as well as materials and lighting that can be utilized within the application in order to create stunning combination of 2D and 3D rendered objects. So it appears Adobe, as we've covered over the last couple of years, has made a huge push in the direction of providing 3D implementation. You know, you can already with Photoshop bring in 3D objects and manipulate them, but with this Felix project, you're able to actually render them in very realistic lighting and so forth, which I think is pretty neat. Haven't ventured back to it. And one other thing that I wanted to mention on this note here is that I think I mentioned it last week, and I mentioned it to you earlier before the show. The company Metal, which makes Skybox and a few other tools for doing 360 videos and stereo 360, as like the one that I showed you, the Confefe video. But I also did one where I recorded using, I finally got the views, Chris, and I showed that last week, so I'll spare the audience of showing it again. But it's cool, and if you haven't seen it, I'll send you a link to it. It's a small little clip that I took out of an hour and 30-minute video of Mary Roach. Are you familiar with her, Chris? Have you heard of her?
Never.
Mary Roach has written several books on science, but she takes a unique spin, like the science of cadavers, called Stiff, the science of sex, called Bonk. What else? She just did one, science of military, not necessarily equipment, but how to move around, called Grunt, where essentially what happens if you've got diarrhea while you're on a mission? So a lot of things that a lot of people either too embarrassed or really didn't want to know, but gravitate to. So she's very popular. If you're an Audible listener, all of her books are available that way. A lot of interesting information in them. So she did an interview at we have Science on Tap, very similar to like Science, what was it called? Science After Dark in San Luis Obispo, similar thing. Obviously with Portland, a higher production scale, but I took in some 360 cameras, just views notably, and recorded their presentation, and it really gives you the sense of being there. Sadly, the Views camera does not have the high definition quality, even though it's a 4K camera. 4K really doesn't do stereo 360 justice. You need at least an 8K, and that's why I've talked about the what is it called, the Insta360. It's a Chinese company who will have a professional $300 or $3,500 camera. And then last week I also covered how Google YouTube will now support 180, because a lot of times only thing you're looking at is what's in front of you in full 360. And some of the ones that they have up there, which I showed last week, are just jaw-dropping. And the reason for that is that you can concentrate all of your resolution and bandwidth to just 180 degrees. And also with it being in stereo, you get that depth information. And there'll be several cameras. In fact, we're going to be covering one shortly. So I think that's really neat. And obviously Adobe now has a lot of tools to be able to support a lot of 3D. After Effects has always had 3D tools. Now it will have a lot more to work with. So I thought that was kind of neat. All right, Chris, on to your next item.
Scanner Darkly.
Scanner Darkly. So you got a scanner item?
I do. Scanner item is, let me pull this up here. Finally, a really good open source structured light piece of software. It's called 3D Underworld. You can find them at 3dunderworld.org. You can actually click on their downloads if you hit their data. I haven't downloaded it yet, and I haven't. I really can't wait to. I have an old projector. I could probably pull off that that little SLA machine I have that I don't really use much because I have the Form 2. This is like some of the models that they're getting. You can actually load up their Sketchfab and look at the quality of these models. I mean, just incredible. And it's all open source. You can actually find the project over at GitHub, and you can see the write-up on what it works. You need 2 cameras. So you need, let's see, enable to do. Let's see what hardware. I don't know where the lit pattern are showing in the following image pattern. So you need a projector, obviously. And then it looks like you need 2 cameras. And it projects these patterns. And, you know, from what I've seen, structured light really gives kind of like, if you're going to scan an object, structured light seems kind of like one of the best ways to do it. I think photogrammetry and structured light seem to be kind of like leading the way. The whole laser thing, I'm kind of iffy about. I haven't really seen a lot of great laser. I think obviously it's going to be a combination of like the 3 of those right now at this point, is a combination between photogrammetry, structured light, and laser will probably be the way it goes. I think structured light is just basically can read better than a laser because you've got dark areas and light areas. And so it can kind of like differentiate the contours of the part, but it seems like it just makes better scans so far. So you can check it out at 3dunderworld.org, fully open source and really good documentation. I don't know how they're funding this. There's a research team. It might be some like so it looks like there's a principal. Yeah. Oh, it's it looks like there's doctorates working on it. So there's some like some bright people, obviously, and it already works with a turntable. So if you have a turntable, a projector, and then I think you need 2 cameras, You'll get some really good scans. The scans coming off this. If you go to 3dunderworld.org, go to data, and you scroll down, you can check out their scans that they're getting from the software. It's pretty killer.
Well, you know, when you mentioned the word laser, you know, we still haven't received ours from the Australia, if I remember correctly. Right?
Yeah, what is up with that? That
yeah,
bevel.
well, maybe next week we'll follow up and I'll send an email out and see where they're at with that. But so we'll do a follow up next week. But the big problem with these line laser scanners, like the Next Engine and so forth, is, or any of them for that matter, is one, you have to pick up through a camera what the laser is emitting or reflecting off the object. So the camera sensor itself is really the failing component in that, as well as you have to rotate the object. So you have the mechanical motion, how finally can you move the object for each of those slices, and then the resolution of the camera itself. The structure sensor is also a structured light, but it uses a laser stochastic pan in the infrared. But again, it's the infrared camera that is the limiting component there. As I found by using new lenses on my 4-eyes lens system, you can focus that and actually get better quality. But in the system you're looking at, by using a projector, let's say a 1080p, the finely gradiated lines, the pattern that's created, as well as, I'm assuming, the cameras are probably fairly expensive, right? They're not talking about webcams there, right? On the system you're talking about?
No, I don't know. I haven't really read too much into it. So I can't tell you what they're using for these.
Well, the systems that I have seen normally use like SLRs or fairly decent camera in order to capture. So when you have quality components, all of it, obviously we've seen that with the Artex scanners. With quality components, you can get some, but they're expensive. So yeah, let me know how that works out for you and what it finally costs you to do that.
Yeah, and a lot of these are used. These are, yeah,
because
yeah,
photogrammetry can capture very quickly as well, but you need lots of cameras, and they all have to capture, and then you have to process it. So there's a lot of cost and obviously post-processing time in order to do that. So I think, sadly, any quality scanning is pretty expensive. Okay, so we kind of missed the 3D in medicine item, I think. So I'm going to jump back to it. And, you know, this is actually something that is near and dear to you because you are actually working with a veterinarian to do this. But this was an article on Fox 5, believe it or not. And then I have another one in VR that's off a tabloid. So information is coming everywhere on this VR and 3D stuff. But essentially, this veterinarian or this individual who specializes in sports medicine rehabilitation in an animal medical center, fitted her dog. And we've seen this before. But the point I wanted to make is that we're seeing more and more, for instance, this is called orthopets. So somebody has actually created a company around it. But essentially by scanning or utilizing MRIs or CT scans, you have a lot of information to create something identical to what the dog. In fact, we talked about using the left or right, depending on which one was amputated, in order to provide a component just by mirroring the component. So we're seeing more and more of this. And this guy talks about how he's created orthotic braces for small animals as well as large 2,000-pound horses. But I just kind of want to segue because, you know, I keep bugging you about this, Chris, but it would be really great to have the vet that you know on the show to kind of talk about this. You know, what is he seeing happening in this industry? I think you said he was going to give a talk that you had to print some components for. So what's his take on it? You probably have spent more time talking to him about this. I mean, is this like an up and coming industry? Is he like a forerunner in it? Chris?
I don't know. Oh, the guy, Bob.
Yeah, Bob.
Yeah, he's teaching a class. Bob's an interesting guy. He was directly mentored by the creator or the inventor of basically the kind of the most common now knee surgery that's done. It was invented by a guy in Oregon, the guy that invented knee surgery for dogs. And because dogs are notorious for blowing out their knees when they like run too fast, and it's not good. So my dog actually, he blew out both his knees within like a 6-month time frame. And Dr. Bob, he went in, replaced them, and my dog's been happy and healthy for about 1.5 years. He's running around just like he ever did. So but he's starting to take CT data, pulling it into a program called Osirix on the Mac, and he is sending me the CT data meshed into an STL, and then I clean it up, throw it over on the printer, and then he uses it for pre-op planning. So the pre-op planning side of things is really important to the vets that really know what they're doing, because they do the pre-op study, and then they don't have to have the animal open. They're not scrambling, and they're not making mistakes because they already know exactly what they're going to do. They know what jigs they're going to use on the animal. So he's kind of come up with a curriculum, and I'm printing like kind of lab models for his students for them to practice on. So they have actual physical bone models. So they go through the STL generation process. They send them over to me. I send the bones. And it definitely gets these are priority models, so everything gets bumped up in the queue because obviously the animals welfare and people's welfare comes first before prototypes, I would say, here in my office, and so they're able to actually cut the bones and kind of plan out their surgery before they ever even touch an animal. So it's pretty cool stuff. And he's been getting flown over to Geneva to give talks. There's a guy coming out from Italy. They're kind of taking this whole thing worldwide, and it's going to, everything from the veterinary world kind of percolates eventually into the, Western medicine, I would say. They've been doing stem cells on horses for 15 years. And it's just starting to kind of percolate into, United States medical system, stem cells. You hear more and more about stem cells, but it all starts in veterinary field because they test all this stuff on animals. So yeah,
and when it works out well. Well, cool. Well, like I said, it would be great to have Bob on. I'd like to bend his ear. We can do a standard interview with him. 10 or 15 minutes if he's got time, or just send me his email. I'll invite him on. I'd like to know more. As you know, planning in the standard human medical community has exploded as well. And it was kind of nice to be at the forefront of that a couple of years ago. So just thought it's really neat that as you know, I've got 2 little tiny miniature wolves. No, they're actually Alaskan Kleekais, but they're like little family members, as is your dog. So we want the best for them, and it's always nice to keep up to date with what's available in the veterinary world. Got a great new veterinarian from Lake Oswego that we go to, so very happy from that perspective. Okay, I'm going to move on to my next item, and we're now in our VR section, which is VR corner in a round room, because that's how I feel sometimes. All right, this is a new 360 camera. It's not out yet. You can pre-order it from, I think it's Yi. Have you heard of them, Chris? Can't hear you. Sorry.
Haven't heard them at all. Haven't heard of this at all.
Okay, well, Yi, let me jump to them real quick. Yi makes a lot of action cameras. In fact, if you've ever looked, here, you can see that there. Their cameras compete very well against the GoPro. In fact, this is one of the reasons why GoPro is kind of plummeted. You have companies like that who are creating products very similar in quality, for about half the price. Well, they've ventured off into other areas, and I think GoPro is supposed to also come out with a VR camera. But what is notable about this new camera, which is the Yi 360, and I apologize if it's pronounced Yi, but I think it's Yi, 360 VR camera, is it has, if you look down here in the bottom, a 5.7K. And as you know, I've been working with this for, gosh, more than a year now. I remember I had the first V360 camera, which was also 4K. But the problem with 4K in a 360 camera is that's the full diameter. So the circumference of the camera. And so that's really like 1K that you're actually looking at. So it's no better than, you know, like HD 1280p. So in order to push that up, you need to be able to have more resolution. And one of the ways to do that is, like in this case, a 6K camera, which pushes it almost to 1080p. For instance, the Views is also 1080p, but that's a misnomer because it's actually about 1K per 90-degree quadrant. So again, less than standard 1280p, or it's 720p, which is 1280. So the more that we can push in this direction is going to provide better quality. 360. The problem with that is, one, it's a lot of data. So if you're trying to watch this on YouTube, the streaming quality is going to be poor. The other thing is the imaging sensors. A 4K camera, as I just mentioned, is about 1K per quadrant, so it's going to be limited. So you need to push that up. Now keep in mind, if you have a 4K camera which says, oh, 3840 by 2160, it's the vertical resolution that actually identifies how much you can actually get out of that sensor, because most 360 cameras, as you can see here, and there's some more images, have a fisheye lens so that they can show between 180 to 220 degrees. And that all has to be in a circular composite. And that means your vertical resolution is going to basically determine what the resolution is out of the sensor. So 2K is about what you can get. This one, it appears, will have about 3K per sensor. That's why it says it's a 6K camera, which is pretty darn good. But more importantly, you have to have the processing, and it has, and what's funny is that this isn't even the best Sony sensor. Let's see where it says. It's using, yeah, I just said that there. The 377, they now have a 378. In fact, a lot of your newer smartphones, these are basically smartphone CMOS sensors in here. So even though we can do a lot with it, it's the processor that's important, and they have a decent processor in here. So I'm really looking forward to this, because even though 360 is really cool, if you don't have a great quality camera, in fact, I've been thinking about just getting a couple of either Blackmagic or a couple of Micro Four Thirds cameras with fisheyes, because I can obviously get the better quality with the CMOS sensor. But you have to, again, run at 4K, which means basically 2K per camera. So I'm looking forward to this. It didn't mention it. Let's see. They're also coming out with their own 180 camera to support the new YouTube format. It'll be interesting if they're going to use the same sensor as they're using in this one here. So basically having this, and then basically instead of having fisheyes on both ends, it'll be two fisheyes next to each other, separated by an IPD about 58, 55 millimeters, in order to create that true depth information. And personally, I like that. It's kind of cool. So this is coming out probably, they say June. You can pre-order it, which means you just give them an email address, and then they'll let you know when it'll be available to order. So here's your photo resolution, 5760 by 28. The video mode is, again, a 5760 by 2880. And what that means is that that's your equirectangular, meaning you have two sphericals against each other. So remember, it's the 2880 vertical resolution that actually relates to your actual true resolution in front of you. So it's basically 4K, which is pretty good. Okay, that's about it on that. Chris, do you have a VR item?
I sure do. Yeah, this one pretty much blew me away. This is just a real quick. I'll put it in the show notes, but it's best watched full screen. This guy did an immersive theater show. I think he did it at what's Sundance Film Festival. Yeah, there it is, Sundance. And you can go watch it on YouTube, or you can watch it on Vimeo. Obviously, Vimeo will give you a little bit better video. This guy does this interactive kind of like augmented reality type projected experience, and it's a performance, and you kind of got to just see it to believe it, and kind of put it in, take some time and go full screen, and it's pretty amazing. It's about 3.5 minutes, almost 4 minutes long. Totally worth it. Go check it out. It's Heart Corpse at Sundance 2017. It's right on YouTube. Really cool little little augmented reality projected performance.
All right, well, I've got this little video. So, Chris, we all remember the Reagan era? I don't know, you probably were a kid, say no to drugs. Now imagine having a VR headset. You bring it in your classroom and say, this is what it's going to be like if you take drugs. All right, I'll let the video speak for itself.
Oh, God.
6月26日是国际禁毒日，25日，广东南沙、梅州等地举办 VR 技术体验吸毒危害的活动。青少年体验后大呼。
According to people that have never.
看的时候就已经不敢了。感觉全身发麻，就是觉得好不舒服。我不看的时候我就已经不敢了。
This is the cops.
Oh, they got their own RoboCop.
Hail RoboCop. Cop worship. Worship. Here's what it's like to do psychedelics, even though none of us have ever done them. We're going to tell you how bad they are. Yeah, they tried to do this too. They did this in our, they did something similar to us. They had the drunk goggles. Did you ever have those?
No.
Yeah, when we were in high school, they tried we had like one of the cops. He was like the dare officer guy, would come and try to scare us how bad the dangers of alcohol. No one would explain. They never talk about the actual nutritional health problems associated with alcohol. They only associate how bad it will make you feel, or how bad the fatalities on the road are, which are definitely a problem, right? Drunk drivers kill a lot of people, but they never talk about what it does to your liver. They never talk about what what it does to
long-term effects.
Yeah, or your brain. I mean, you look at a brain of an alcoholic versus a brain of a healthy person. It's like Swiss cheese. It's gross. So, but what they do is they have these drunk goggles that just basically like disorient you, make everything blurry, and you're walking around, But it's like it's totally misrepresentative of the entire of being drunk. I mean, anybody that's had a drink would know that that's not anything like it. Like, yeah, try to drive with those on will probably impair you as much as being drunk when you're driving, but it's not the same thing. And it's just funny because it's like, this is the same type of thing. They're like trying to invent a psychedelic experience, but there's way more going on with the psychedelic experience.
Very true.
Kind of funny.
Yeah, it is. Well, I mean, what are you going to do? I mean, I guess the best thing is just give them some LSD and let them try it out in a controlled condition. No, I don't recommend that.
Why not?
But I think it's amusing.
Everybody needs to experience that.
The Chinese seem to be very open to all kinds of new ideas and doing
I
things.
guess. Yeah.
I guess. All right. So, speaking of the Chinese, this is the NoloVR system. So if you want to pre-order now, sadly, a lot of people are complaining about this because, as mentioned, its Kickstarter was $99 and they bumped the price up to $199. Or if you get the RiftCat code, which allows you to use it as a Steam VR headset, or 6 Degrees of Freedom is not actually a headset. It's $209. But in saying that, for $89, it's a great little thing, especially if you got a decent phone. It comes with a USB cable so that you can connect it directly to your PC and have, people have mentioned that it's okay. But I've been more interested because I've used the structure sensor to do what they call 6 Degrees of Freedom through inside-out tracking. I wanted to try this and see how it compares. The thing that I like is not necessarily the headset or the head unit, which, if you remember, kind of bolts on the top, but these little controllers. They're kind of cool. They're basically like miniature HTC Vive controllers. The little top units are what has the infrared detectors and the ultrasonic units so that they can be seen in position in space. But they actually, can you say quality plastic? They actually feel they run on, they have fairly good heft to them. They feel quality. The whole unit seems like a quality unit. So it's not like you're buying junk, and it works okay. So if you, at $89, I'd say it's a no-brainer. If you wanted to experiment with using 6 Degrees of Freedom, it is a no-brainer. They don't support Unreal yet, but that's coming. But they have a full Android and PC. They have nothing for iOS yet. Hopefully that will come as well. But as you can see here, it's a neat little unit. And, I look forward to playing with it more. I did notice, though, you were talking about being drunk. Hook this thing up because its latency is a little bit bad. In fact, I left my HTC Vive trackers on. Well, since this works on a similar thing, I couldn't even get it to work. And then I realized, oh, wait, my HTC Vive tracker, your lighthouses had to be turned off. Once I turned them off, it worked okay. But I noticed that with poor latency, it's kind of like being drunk. You don't know where your floor is. So I do think the VR can provide some similarities of being drunk. They'd better have bags for it because it'll make you sick pretty easy. But I noticed when I was walking through that bathroom, because you had a very narrow space, it kind of moved around like a fun house. I don't know, the VR fun house. So I kind of like that unit. So if you've got a little extra money, I'd highly recommend moving into that. And so I have another demo, Chris, but I'm going to let you go ahead and do the Print Whisper first. Don't know what your schedule's like, but I'll let you go ahead and finish the Print Whisper.
Sounds good. Sounds good. So obviously, just like exercise, skills take practice to develop and nurture. 3D printing is a skill that requires a lot of patience and practice to get your machines to behave like you want. I know mine do. So I like to look for projects that push my skill boundaries beyond my current comfort zone all the time. And beyond printing calibration cubes and benchies, those can only take you so far. So I found a new project that's really started to push my boundaries as far as my knowledge of whether it's Simplify 3D and kind of my little spot machines and printing PLA. And so the guys over at 3D Print Labs or 3DLabPrint.com have about a dozen different model aircraft based on popular airframes, historical airframes. And all the models are built to mount servos, motors, transmitters, and ESCs, and a battery, so you can fly them. You can actually fly these models after you print them. So they're like 3D printed RC model airplanes. And they have super detailed instructions. They have Simplify 3D profiles. They've got Cura and even slicer profiles that you can tweak, and a really great forum. And so it really makes you use your noggin, since it's a delicate balance. You have to find this delicate balance between printability and making it lightweight enough that it'll actually make the plane fly. So right now I'm working on this Cessna 152, which is really probably the most common airplane ever built. The 152 is like what most everybody learns to fly in. I should say the 170 and the 180 are really common aircraft today, but the 152 was the one that I think my granddad used to fly us around in. And so far, I've only built the flaps and ailerons, and the wings are printing now, or I'm starting to print the wings now. And you can then take, after I get this built, you can take the motors, the ESCs, and the radio stuff from all my crashed quadcopter boneyard that I have, and you can just rob those components. The motors work fine for this project. And so here's an example. This is like the aileron from one of the wings that I have assembled. This was 4 parts of the model, and then you use a PLA glue and a catalyst. And this is actually really handy stuff. If you haven't used this stuff before, it's really handy for bonding models quick. So you put this on, you get your model lined up, and this will dry normally in a few minutes. This one is a 10 to 25 second, but if you get it lined up and then you spray this Instaset on there, it sets it immediately. So you can build stuff really quick with this MaxiCure stuff. They recommend an aerosol one, but I just got the hand spray one off Amazon. You can buy this stuff for like $8, and that'll be enough to last you for a long time. But here's what the aileron looks like at a clear PLA, and it's got like the internal struts and everything. This is all printed like one perimeter inside here. So it's really tricky to print, but once you get it figured out and you've had some failed prints and you kind of do some trial and error, you can see what works, what doesn't. It's a really good way. So I'll show you the website real quick, just so you can get an idea. Here's the Cessna 152 trainer sport plane. This is what the plane looks like. And this is what it looks like when it's complete. So these sections here, so like one of these sections here is the section so it's a fairly big plane. I mean, it's pretty big, but what a fun project, something to really push the limits of my 3D printing, but then also create something useful that I can go out and I can enjoy this, because I like flying RC stuff around. And again, they have like really detailed build instructions. Here's all the parts. I think it's like I don't know how many parts that is, but it's like 40 or 50 parts that you end up printing. Maybe not that many, maybe only 20, but it's a lot. It's a lot of parts. And once you get it all together, you can just go fly it around. And they have weights and everything that that you're supposed to have, that everything's supposed to weigh. They actually have prepared G codes also for the i3. So if you have a Prusa i3, they have G code ready to go for you. That all you got to do is put the material in, and then here's the detailed build instructions, user guides, flight videos. Here's the thing taken off. There it is flying. And you got to see, they have some really cool models. So they have like ones that are like more kind of like more just built to be easy trainers. This one is kind of a mix between trainer and a real one, they've got like some classics on here. You can even get the P-38 Lightning. That would be a really fun one, at least to hang in the office. And I'm printing it out of clear PLA like they are, so you can see the internal structures. Yeah, what was that, Mike?
So essentially it's like modeling, but you create all your own components.
Yeah, you print out all the components. They have all the STLs, and they have and then you just print it out. You print them. according to the specs that they say. They give you the weight of how much everything's supposed to weigh. So I put everything on a scale and make sure that it's close weight-wise, and then you know, I'll know maybe next week or the week after I'll have this thing all ready to go. I'll have it all put together, and I'm working. And the models are they're about 20 or 30 bucks. Some of them are 20 bucks, and then the other ones are 30 bucks, which is pretty reasonable for a model of this detail. You know, I mean, then you got and you have maybe like 50 bucks worth of material. You know, maybe a spool of material, about it, of maybe less.
That's pretty cool, Chris.
Yeah. Yeah. So looking forward to having it together.
So I'm going to go ahead and move right into my little lessons for today.
Okay.
So let me jump to the screen that has that information on it. Where are we? Here we go. So as I mentioned to you, I have been working with a product called Simlab. So I've loaded it up on my ASUS VR laptop, and here it is. And for whatever reason, when I saved it, it doesn't seem to have textures anymore. Boo-hoo. But I'll go ahead and just start from scratch with it. So essentially, let's start new, and then we'll just create a 2D ground. But we're going to import a SketchUp model, and I have them here. So we'll look for our small bathroom skip file, and just leave all that alone. Now I've had to do some work on it, but essentially you can assign it materials that the unit uses. That's what you have down here. There you go. So here's directly from SketchUp, but I can assign it metallic surfaces and mirrored surfaces. And then it has its own built-in photon-based renderer. So I will go ahead and do that. So we'll just do that. So there we go. So it's fairly quick. Can you see that, Chris?
Yeah. Looks good, man.
Yeah, and the cool thing is, this is, I talked about it a little bit last week. It's a company out of Jordan, and they want $200 for their pro version, and they also have a VR version. And then I think for 8-10 days, you can get a demo version. You just have to send them an email address, and then they'll send you a little demo license, which has access to all their product. And then you can move it around, but obviously you have to render it each time, and then you can save these out. But then they have this cool little tool, which is what I bought it for, called texture-based baking. So let me get out of rendering. And the texture baking, and I'll just select one wall to make it quick, is pretty easy. I'll just use the defaults, but you just do smart baking. And then here we can, I'll use 512. But you want to keep this in mind. I'm going to talk a little bit in a little bit why texture baking, especially in VR, has to be done at a higher resolution, because unlike just looking at a 3D model that'll show you an AR, you're inside the model. So you're going to see all the artifacts from a low resolution bake. So I'll go ahead and do this one here. And normally you want to bake all of your surfaces, because it can take, in fact, when I did it the other day with high resolution, there you go. So see the wall? But notice, so what it does is it builds the shadowing directly into the texture for the model. So this is called unlit texture modeling, and it's very important in 360. In fact, remember, what did I call it? Inside Van Gogh. I worked with, God, I can't think of his name now, but he's a Russian immigrant to France who's been doing a lot of 3D work. Well, his Inside Van Gogh model was all done basically by baking shadows and lights directly into the textures. So then all you have to do in Unity and Unreal is basically identify that it's unlit, which requires no lighting. And what that does is just obviously improves the performance of your mobile experience, like you saw when I opened up the show in the bathroom. But as mentioned, this is at 512, and you can see the modelness of the surface here. Can you see that, Chris?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like kind of up close, very polygon-like, but I can see that.
And then let's go to an edge. This is not too bad because it's a nice straight edge. But for instance, well, actually I didn't. So let's go ahead and bake this. And you can set the range. So smaller objects, obviously you don't need a large. See how it baked it in? So it's okay, but notice the shadowing there has some artifacts. So let's take this again and increase the baking to, I don't know, let's say 1024 maximum of 2048. And then you can see it's going to take longer, but you'll see this artifacting should be, and notice it's taking longer to prepare it as well.
Mm-hmm.
So see how you can already start seeing how the texture is more refined. So while this is rendering behind me, so why do you want to do this? Now you could probably do this in Blender, but I don't know if you work with Blender. It's a tool that I use a lot, but it's like a Swiss Army knife. So the processes aren't as streamlined. You know, how easier can you get than a smart bake function? Once you learn some of the nuances, you can set it aside, bake it, and then what I've had to do is actually use Blender to go in and change faces for whatever reason. And after working with SketchUp for some time now, the models that come out of SketchUp are not very desirable. And even though you can get a lot of free models in their cloud, the models, you get what you pay for, which is nothing. And some of those models are very poor. Like in this case, you can see the polygon. The actual UV mapping is somewhat poor. And sometimes you just have to redo them. And sometimes it's just easier to do it from scratch. Okay, so it's almost done. It's now finding the texture scenes, which is kind of cool because what that does is it ensures. So there you can see, even though it didn't help the shadow behind it, because remember that's still built into the wall, it did refine the actual model itself and it looks a little cleaner. So again, if you're making a model for AR, you don't necessarily have to use such large textures. And textures, just like using a lot of polygons, can degrade your VR experience or performance. So kind of keep that in mind. And the other cool thing is that you can assign it materials, and which made it very easy once they were all baked in to bring that into Unity. I did have to reassign some materials like the mirror. I had to make it, actually I was able to adjust it in here, make it so that it's a mirror. And you do that by increasing its reflectivity. So it's fairly easy to do. And I don't think I looked in the mirror, but even though you can't look at yourself, you could create a dynamic reflecting ball that would take your object into consideration. You could look at yourself in the mirror if you wanted to. There are people who have done that little tricks or have something similar. So it's a cool little tool. And then you can export it. And this is another advantage of this tool. You can export it to basically everything in the world. I don't know if you ever use 3D PDF, but this is a cool little format to send to people. You can then, here's your export. So here are the multiple 3D file formats that can be used, which is extensive. I've used FBX, and even FBX, let me do a test. You can then support it with different versions of FBXs. which is very important. In fact, I found that Blender can't even support FBX 2016. It crashes it. So I had to go down to 2014 for it to open it. So it's kind of like ahead of the time. So if you're looking for a great tool and have $200, this I would highly recommend adding to your VR toolkit. And if you have another 100, you can then get their virtual reality toolkit, which then will build VR experiences that you can launch immediately in HTC Vive or Oculus, and also have actions set up with it, plus some special effects, which are some shaders. So you could do it all within this package and immediately export it to Oculus, or if you want to do it from scratch using Unity or Unreal, it does have that export capability as well. So great tool, and it allowed me to do this. So Chris, you're going to like this one.
Okay.
We talked about ARKit. So here is an opportunity, and let me set it up real quick. All right, let's see if well, I can play. So this is a video that I recorded the other day while I'm setting up this one. Okay, so where are we? So what I'm doing real quick is setting up the screen mirroring. All right. Are you ready, Chris?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so let me jump to the screen. So here we go. Here's the ARK small bathroom, or ARKit. You ready? Can you see it?
Mm-hmm.
So now I can move around. So
It's your bathroom on your desk.
Yep.
That's pretty neat.
So imagine taking this out to a client and be able to, this is obviously a huge tablet, but even the new one that just came out, which I think I'm going to get as well. What is it? 10.5? I think it's that size. It's a little larger than their 9-inch iPad. but it's a Pro, which means you can use the stylus with it, and it also has the fastest processor. A lot of people are really raving about it. But more importantly, it also has a great camera, which means it'll be able to do this at least plane base, which means flat surface to lock your models in. Pretty cool, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Let's go through the front door. So I literally, all it was is, if you look at it from the top, let's see if I can do that. So I thought that was pretty neat. So I'm also working on a version that can be used in a headset. So you can do AR in your headset. Kind of, that would be the mixed reality. So that should be, I should have a demo for that next week. But imagine, you know, using Simlabs, which is what I use to bake all this. You know, it's pretty stable, wouldn't you agree?
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I watched a video on the difference between the Google Tango and Apple VR. And it seems like the Project Tango is just a lot more, it's a lot less jittery.
Yeah, well, basically you're using a single camera, where Tango uses multiple cameras, including an actual depth finder. But we'll see when the iPhone 8 comes out. There are limited Tango devices, but I'm also going to be getting, as soon as it hits Verizon, the Asus Zenfone AR, which is a regular size phone. In the past, Tango phones used to be bulky or a tablet. Now this is like a regular phone. It will also support Daydream. And yes, with my Niobe IO Play headset, I'll be able to walk around without having a Nolo system. So there's all kinds of options available to you. So I'm really impressed with it, especially with a large screen. It makes it, you know, kind of like a picture window. And as you talked about, you could use this for video use. Pretty excited about it, and look forward to seeing more people create some fun stuff. Somebody had this cool animated dancer that they had like running, dancing in their room, and it was kind of creepy. So I can see a lot of uses for that. Okay, so I'm going to put this down, and I'll play this little video. This is, you know, I've shown little Skinny Pete before, but this is a version using ARKit that I'll play. So even in the medical community, I could see this being utilized.
For sure.
Oh, well, that's about it on my end.
Awesome.
So I'll have more in the show notes, but you know, what's funny is that you should, any of your 3D models that you have that you're really proud of, why don't you send them my way, and I'll make a baked AR version of it and maybe show it off next week.
They're all on my Thingiverse. You go to Thingiverse, and you'll be able to check out.
Do you also include your step?
It goes directly into Onshape public document, so I made it public and open source. I actually did another one this week that was a really popular file that was a carabiner model that somebody did. This guy named Walter did, and he put his Onshape files up. I couldn't get the thing to latch nice, so I made my own version. I took his and I remixed it on. But you'll be able to check out the Onshape files are there, the STL files are there, and of course the Arduino code. But here I can, I'll send you the Thingiverse link to the air quality monitor, and yeah, and you're free to remix it however you want.
Very cool. And on that note, just thought I'd let people know. Let me sign in. I have made most of my models, except for the Niobe IO Play models, but all of my models for the 4eyes as well as others are now available to go out and print or download for yourself. So like you, I'm taking a more public stance. One, it's just I don't make enough money to print them out. So let me jump to, you can even buy a model of Chris full color for $11.64.
To add to your shrine.
That's right.
You never know.
Never know.
You want to do some Chris worship.
So as mentioned, these if you wanted to use the replacement base for your structure sensors, so you can use magnets, that's also available. So all of these are available. Some of them have instructions. The 4eyes lens now, oops, I'm sorry, I was still looking at you. My 4eyes lens, let's see where it's at. I don't even know where it's at. Maybe I didn't list it. Well, that's bad. So there's also previous versions of the phone-based glasses. I wonder where it went. Oh, well. I know that I made it public. Oh, well, so I'll have to go back and find that. So the new bracket will be in the show notes. So if you're looking at creating your own 4eyes, the only problem is that you do have to go out and buy the lenses for it, which aren't cheap, but you can save yourself $10 to $20 from buying me personally. And the fact is that I'm not buying or making them anymore. This will probably be the only way that you can get it. I will be updating the lens system, or soon the software, over the next month. But other than that, I won't be selling 4eyes. All right, Chris, I'll let you take over and say goodbye to us.
Yeah, well, thanks to all of our wonderful listeners and also our great news sources. As usual, got a shout out to Printrbelt and 3dprintingindustry.com, Ultimaker, 3dunderworld.org, roadtovr.com, always helping us out, and 3D Lab Print and many others available in the show notes accompanying this video on YouTube. And we will see you next week on another episode of All Things 3D.
Okay, great. Bye, Chris.
See ya.